Matheson sat at the edge of the sleek, modern desk in his office, the sunlight filtering through the glass windows and casting shadows over the room. The city of San Francisco sprawled below him, a symbol of success. His company was at its peak, and so was his life, at least on the surface. The mansion he lived in, the sports cars, the tailored suits, everything screamed wealth, power, and control. Yet despite it all, Leo felt an emptiness that he couldn't shake. Across the room, Carla was busy sorting through some documents, unaware of the storm brewing in Leo's mind. She was everything he could ever want, intelligent, beautiful, and fiercely independent. They had been together for 2 years now, and yet Leo couldn't quiet the voice in his head that asked the same question over and over. Does she really love me? Or does she love my money? Leo's eyes followed her as she moved, her presence as soothing as it was disorienting. She was confident, easygoing, and often took the lead in their relationship. At first, he had been drawn to her honesty, her willingness to speak her mind, her ability to be herself around him. But lately, the doubts had crept in. Was she just another woman who loved the luxuries that came with being his partner? The thought gnawed at him. Leo, you okay? Carla's voice broke through his thoughts, and he blinked, focusing on her. She was standing by his desk now, concern written across her face. Yeah, just thinking, he replied, trying to sound casual. Thinking about what? He wondered. About her. About how he'd never truly know if she loved him for who he was, or if the riches he had were the real attraction. I've been meaning to talk to you about something, he said, his voice low and serious. She raised an eyebrow. What's up? Leo hesitated, his mind racing. He had everything, money, power, success, but it was all meaningless without trust, without knowing that Carla, the woman he loved, wasn't here for his bank account. He stood up suddenly, a decision forming in his mind. I think it's time for a test, he said, his voice almost a whisper. Carla looked at him, confused. A test? She repeated, clearly not understanding. Yeah, I want to know if you'd still love me, if I didn't have all this. He gestured to the room around them, the polished furniture, the view, the glint of wealth. I want to see if you love me or if you just love the life I give you. Carla blinked, her expression shifting from confusion to concern. Leo, what are you talking about? I've been thinking a lot lately, he continued, his heart pounding in his chest. What would happen if I lost everything? If I wasn't the millionaire you met, but just a regular guy? He walked to the window, looking out over the city that had been his playground for so long. I need to know if you'd still want me then, or if you'd walk away like everyone else. Carla stood in stunned silence, unsure of how to respond. She had always known Leo as the man who could have anything, do anything, but this was different. This was raw, vulnerable, and it was something she had never seen from him before. Leo, she began, but Leo cut her off before she could finish. I'm serious, he said, his voice trembling. I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to pretend to lose everything, the house, the cars, everything. And I want to see if you'll still be here, if you still love me. Carla's face softened, but the hurt was still there. Leo, she whispered, this is crazy. I have to know, he insisted. I need to see if you're really in this for us or just the lifestyle. If I'm not the millionaire, if I'm just a guy with nothing but a heart, will you still love me? She stood silently, looking at him. Her heart raced, and her mind whirled with a mix of emotions. Is he serious? She loved him. But this felt like a test she didn't ask for, a test that could break everything. I don't need your money, Leo, Carla finally said, her voice quiet but firm. I've never needed your money. I need you. But Leo wasn't sure if that was enough. The silence between them grew thick, and Leo could feel his pulse quicken. The weight of what he had just proposed hung heavy in the air, and in that moment, Leo realized that this test, this twisted, misguided test, was something he had to do. Because without it, he couldn't move forward. He couldn't move forward with her, not without knowing if the love they had was real. Carla turned away, walking to the door. She didn't want to argue. She didn't want to fight. But she didn't know what to say. Her voice broke as she spoke one last time before leaving the room. I'll be here, Leo, but this This isn't how you find out the truth." As she walked out of the room, Leo stood alone, staring at the empty space where she had just been. The illusion had begun. Carla couldn't believe what Leo had said to her last night. The words echoed in her mind as she woke up the next morning, the weight of the conversation pressing on her chest. "I need to know if you love me for who I am, or if you just love my money." She rolled over in bed, staring at the ceiling. Leo's challenge had left her shaken. He wanted to test her. He wanted her to prove her love by accepting a life without the luxury, without the riches. And as crazy as it sounded, she wasn't sure how to feel about it. Carla had always been independent, never relying on anyone for anything. She had her own career, her own life, and her own dreams. But Leo was different. He was the man she had fallen for, not the wealth he flaunted. But was that enough? Was that really enough to prove that her love for him was real? She got out of bed, pulled on her clothes, and tried to shake off the doubt creeping in. But as she stepped into the living room, she saw Leo sitting by the window, staring out at the skyline. The house was eerily quiet, as if the tension from the night before was still lingering in the air. Leo didn't turn around when she entered the room. His voice was low, almost hesitant when he finally spoke. "I've been thinking about what I said," he began, not meeting her eyes. "And I think it's time we start. I need you to see what I mean." Carla's heart raced. He was serious. The test was about to begin. She crossed the room and stood beside him, looking out at the city below. It was the same city she had grown to love, the one where they had built their life together. But now everything felt different. Everything felt fragile. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice tight with uncertainty. Leo took a deep breath. "I want us to live like normal people for a while," he said. "No more fancy dinners, no more private jets. I'll sell the cars, the mansion, and we'll move into something smaller. We'll see how you feel about me when we don't have anything left." Carla swallowed hard, the reality of the situation sinking in. Was he really doing this? Was he really willing to give up everything just to test her? She opened her mouth to protest, but Leo cut her off. "I'm serious, Carla. This isn't about the money anymore. This is about us. Can we be happy without all of this? Can you still love me without all the things I've given you?" His voice cracked, and Carla could hear the fear behind it. He wasn't just testing her, he was testing himself too. For a moment, Carla stood in silence, weighing her options. She had always been the one who wanted something real, something deeper than just the surface-level glitz of wealth. But could she really prove it to him by giving up everything they had built together? It felt wrong. It felt like he was asking her to prove something that didn't need to be proven. But then she thought of him, Leo, the man she loved, the man who was standing before her now, vulnerable and uncertain. He was asking her to show him that she loved him. "I'll do it," Carla said, her voice steady but tinged with doubt. "But only because I want to prove to you that my love for you isn't about the money. It's about you." Leo turned to face her, his eyes searching hers, as if he were looking for something he couldn't find. "Thank you," he whispered, and there was something raw in his voice, something she hadn't heard before. They spent the rest of the day packing up their things, putting away the clothes that symbolized their wealth, and sorting through the possessions that defined their life together. It felt surreal, like they were erasing a part of themselves. That evening, they moved into a modest apartment in a quiet part of the city. The space was smaller, simpler, but it felt more real. The walls were bare, the furniture plain. It was a stark contrast to the luxurious mansion they had left behind. There was no grand view, no extravagant decorations, just the two of them, alone in this unfamiliar world. Leo stood by the window, looking out over the city again. He seemed lost in thought, as if trying to come to terms with the new reality they were living in. Carla, on the other hand, tried to make the best of it. She unpacked their things, trying to settle into this new version of their life, but the silence between them felt heavy. "I'm going to cook dinner tonight," Carla said, trying to break the tension. "How about we have a simple meal, just the two of us?" Leo turned toward her, his face softening. "That sounds good," he said, his voice more relaxed than it had been all day. They ate together, sharing stories and laughs like they used to when they first met, before the money had become a part of their lives. But the weight of the day lingered. Carla couldn't help but wonder, was this test really necessary? And if it was, would it be enough to show Leo that her love for him wasn't tied to anything material? Later that night, as they lay in bed, Leo spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think we'll be okay?" he asked, his hand resting gently on hers. Carla turned to face him, her heart aching with a mix of uncertainty and determination. "We'll figure it out," she said, her voice steady despite the doubts swirling in her mind. "But we need to trust each other. No more tests." Leo nodded, but she could see the hesitation in his eyes. He wasn't convinced yet, but Carla was willing to try. For him, for them. The illusion had begun, and now it was time to see if they could survive without the safety net of wealth. Carla couldn't sleep. The silence in the apartment was deafening. It had been a week since they moved into the small, humble space. The luxury of their old life felt like a distant memory, and yet the tension between them had only grown. Every day, Leo went through the motions, but she could see the weight of his guilt in his eyes. She had agreed to the test, but there was something gnawing at her, a sense that Leo was still holding something back. His behavior was different, more distant, like he was carrying a secret too heavy to share. The Leo she knew was confident, in control, always quick with a joke. But now, he seemed like a man undone by the very life he had built. She could see the cracks forming, but what was beneath them? What was Leo hiding? She wasn't sure when it started, but her suspicion grew the moment she noticed something out of place. A text message. A simple notification that popped up on his phone while they were eating breakfast one morning. The message was from someone named Eleanor, and while Leo quickly swiped it away, she caught a glimpse of the words. "Are you sure she doesn't know?" The words hung in the air, their meaning unclear but enough to stir something deep within her. She had been brushing off small signs, trying to convince herself that Leo's transformation was genuine. But this was different. That afternoon, she decided to go for a walk to clear her mind. But as she wandered the streets, she couldn't stop thinking about that message. What was Leo hiding from her? And more importantly, why couldn't he be honest with her? When she returned to the apartment, she found Leo sitting at the kitchen table, his face buried in his hands. His phone lay on the table face down. The moment she walked in, he looked up, his eyes wide with that same guilty expression. "Carla," he began, his voice hoarse, "we need to talk." She nodded but didn't sit. Her heart pounded as she tried to steady herself. She needed answers, no more half-truths, no more lies. "I'm listening," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Leo took a deep breath, and for the first time in days, his facade cracked. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes staring out the window. "There's something I didn't tell you," he started. "Something about the situation I've put us in. It's not just about the money." Carla's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to keep her voice even. Leo hesitated, looking like he was weighing the decision to tell her, as if he had been hiding this truth for far too long. "There's more to the reason I'm doing this. Testing you, I mean," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's not just about love. It's about control and fear." Carla felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't the Leo she thought she knew. "Fear of what?" she asked, her voice rising. "Fear of what, Leo?" Leo's eyes locked with hers. He looked broken. "I've been living a lie, Carla. This whole persona I've created. The money, the lifestyle, it was all supposed to protect me, but it hasn't. It hasn't protected me from losing everything." Her confusion deepened. "Losing everything? What do you mean?" Leo stood up suddenly, pacing around the small room. "It's not just the wealth I've been hiding, Carla. It's something bigger. Something I didn't want to drag you into." Carla took a step forward, her voice barely a whisper. "What is it?" Leo stopped pacing, looking at her with such sadness that it broke her heart. "I've been in debt for years," he confessed, his voice cracking. "More than you could ever imagine. I've been hiding it from you, from everyone, all of it. My company, my investments, they were built on lies." Carla's mind spun as she tried to process his words. Debt? Lies? How could Leo, the man who seemed to have it all, be hiding such a dark truth? "I thought I could control it," Leo continued. his eyes never leaving hers. But it spiraled out of control. And when I thought everything was crashing down, I thought I could push you away. Make you prove to me that you loved me without everything else. Without the money. Carla stood there, paralyzed. The man she had fallen for, the one who had shown her all the best parts of life, had been living in constant fear. Fear of losing her, fear of losing himself, and worst of all, fear of the truth. "So you were testing me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Testing my love? All of this? It wasn't real?" Leo stepped forward, reaching out to her. "No, Carla, it was real. I love you. But I've been too scared to let you in. I thought I could protect you from the truth, from the mess I've made of everything." Carla felt her chest tighten. The revelation hit her like a punch in the stomach. She had always known Leo had secrets, but this was more than she could have imagined. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "You've been hiding this from me. And now you're telling me that everything was a test?" Leo's face contorted with regret. "I didn't want it to be like this. I never wanted to hurt you." Carla turned away from him, her emotions swirling. How could she ever trust him again? How could she move forward knowing that everything about their life together had been a lie? "I don't know what to do with this," she said, her voice breaking. Leo's voice shook as he stepped toward her. "I'll do anything, Carla, anything to fix this." But Carla didn't know if anything could fix what had been broken. The hidden truth was out, but at what cost? Carla couldn't move. The words Leo had just spoken echoed in her mind like a broken record, each one cutting deeper than the last. "I've been in debt for years. My life has been built on lies." She had always known there were pieces of his life he kept hidden. But this was beyond what she could have ever imagined. His confession had shattered everything she thought she knew about their relationship. Leo stood there watching her closely, his face an open book of guilt and regret. But no matter how much he pleaded with his eyes, no matter how much his voice cracked, Carla couldn't bring herself to forgive him. Not yet. "You lied to me, Leo," she finally whispered, her voice trembling. "For how long? For all of it? This whole time, everything we had? It was just a game to you?" He flinched at her words, and for a moment Carla thought she saw the weight of his actions truly hitting him. He had been testing her love for him like a puppet master pulling strings. It wasn't just about money. It was about control, about keeping her on his terms, making her prove herself worthy of him. Carla stepped back, her chest tightening with every breath. She felt betrayed on a level she hadn't thought possible. She wasn't angry, not yet, but the disappointment, the pain was suffocating. "I never wanted it to be like this," Leo said, his voice quiet, almost pleading. "I was just scared. Scared of losing you. Scared of what would happen if you saw the real me." "The real you?" Carla repeated, her voice gaining strength. "The real you is someone who doesn't trust the woman he says he loves, someone who's been lying to her, manipulating her every move. Who does that?" Leo opened his mouth to say something, but Carla raised a hand, silencing him. "No, you don't get to justify this," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "You don't get to twist this into something I did wrong. You asked for my trust and then you betrayed it. You asked me to prove my love for you, but you never once considered how it would make me feel, did you?" Leo's face was pale, his jaw clenched as if he were fighting back tears. But Carla didn't care. She had given him her heart, and he had crushed it with his lies. She felt stupid for believing that everything they shared was real, that his love for her wasn't just another transaction in the game of life he had been playing. I know," Leo said finally, his voice breaking. "I don't know what I was thinking. I just thought if I could see that you loved me without the wealth, without all of this." He gestured weakly around them, the small apartment that now felt suffocating. "That maybe, just maybe, I could prove to myself that I was worth loving, that I wasn't just someone you were with because of the life I could give you." Carla shook her head. "You don't get it, Leo. I never needed your wealth. I never wanted it. I wanted you, the real you. But now I don't even know who that is." Leo stepped forward, reaching out for her, but Carla instinctively took a step back. His hands fell to his sides, defeated. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he whispered. "I thought that by showing you how much I had, I was showing you how much I loved you. But all I've done is destroy what we had." Carla couldn't stop the tears that welled up in her eyes. She wiped them away angrily, but the floodgates had already opened. "You never trusted me, Leo. From the moment you decided to test me, you made me feel like I was nothing but a project to you. How can you love someone and do that?" Leo remained silent, his gaze fixed on her, but his eyes were distant, as though he were seeing her for the first time. Carla could feel her heart breaking even more with every passing second. She'd spent so many nights lying next to him, believing in their future, and now it all seemed like a cruel joke. "I've failed you," Leo murmured. "And I failed myself. I should have just trusted you, trusted us. But I was too afraid of being hurt." Carla took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The weight of his words, of his betrayal, felt like it was crushing her chest. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this," she said, the words coming out cold, but they were the truth. "You didn't just lie to me, Leo. You lied to yourself. You wanted to control me, to make me prove that I loved you, that I wasn't in it for the money. But you never gave me a chance to love you the way you are. You didn't trust me, not even for a second." Leo was still standing there, the space between them thick with the silence that followed. He was broken, but so was she. And this time, Carla knew she couldn't just sweep it all under the rug. The lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, it was too much to overlook. "I don't know what to do anymore," Carla whispered, her voice barely audible. "I can't keep living like this, Leo. I need to know if what we had was ever real, or if it was just a game." Leo didn't speak. He simply nodded, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. He didn't deserve her forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe never. He had pushed her away, tested her love in the most painful way imaginable. And now he had nothing left. Carla turned away from him, unable to look at him any longer. The trust, the connection they had once shared, was gone. It had been shattered in a single moment of selfishness, and she knew deep down that she couldn't go back to who they were before. The sound of the phone vibrating on the table snapped Carla out of her thoughts. She had been staring at the blank wall for what felt like hours, her mind racing, her heart still tangled in the mess of Leo's betrayal. She glanced at the screen and saw the name Sarah O'Connor, the same Sarah who had been Leo's ex-girlfriend, the one who had never truly left his life. Carla's breath caught in her throat. This was the last thing she needed right now, but for some reason she couldn't help but feel like this call was inevitable. With a reluctant sigh, Carla answered. "Carla, it's Sarah," came the voice on the other end, cool and calculating. "I think we need to talk." The words felt like an ambush. "What do you want?" Carla asked, her voice steady but tight, masking the sudden spike of anger rising in her chest. "Don't be like that," Sarah replied, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "I'm just trying to help you. Leo has a way of messing things up, doesn't he?" Carla clenched her jaw. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, come on," Sarah said with a knowing laugh. "You think this whole situation is just about money? It's not. It never was. Leo's always been about control. He's a mess, Carla. And you're just another piece of the puzzle he's trying to solve." Carla's stomach turned. This wasn't just a phone call. This was an attack, and Sarah wasn't going to stop until Carla was torn apart. "I don't need your advice, Sarah," Carla said, her voice sharp. "If you think I'm going to listen to you, you're wrong." "Listen, I get it," Sarah said, her voice lowering. "You think Leo's changed, right? But trust me, he's not the man you think he is. You're just another pawn in his game, Carla. And you'll see it eventually. He's never going to love you the way you deserve. He's always going to need something more." Carla felt her pulse quicken. She had heard enough. "If you're done trying to tear me down, I'm hanging up." "No," Sarah said quickly, almost sounding concerned. "Wait, before you go, just remember, Leo's always been about winning. And you're just a prize. He'll test you. He'll make you prove yourself over and over. But in the end, he'll never stop looking for something better." The words hit Carla like a slap. She hadn't expected Sarah to say anything like that. But there was something unsettling about how much Sarah knew. It was as if she understood Leo in a way Carla never could. It made her stomach twist with unease. "Goodbye, Sarah," Carla said, her hand shaking as she ended the call. She sat there for a moment, the weight of the conversation settling heavily on her shoulders. Sarah's words echoed in her mind. "Leo would never love you the way you deserve." It wasn't the first time Carla had heard something like that, but hearing it from Sarah, of all people, made it feel like a reality she couldn't ignore anymore. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the door opening. Leo stepped into the apartment, his tired eyes meeting hers. "Carla," he said, his voice soft. "We need to talk." Carla couldn't hold back the flood of emotions anymore. He doesn't get it. He never has. She stood up quickly, her heart pounding as the anger boiled inside her. "We need to talk. You've been hiding the truth from me for weeks. You've lied, manipulated me, and now you—" "Carla, please," Leo said, cutting her off, his hand outstretched. "I never wanted to hurt you." Carla stepped back, pulling away from his touch. "You never wanted to hurt me? Then why are we here, Leo? Why am I sitting here, wondering if everything we've had is just a joke to you? Why didn't you tell me about your debts, your lies? Why the hell did you think this was a game?" Leo looked at her with desperation in his eyes. "I told you. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I thought if I tested you, I could see if you loved me for me, or just for what I could give you." Carla's breath caught in her throat. "That's it, isn't it? You've been testing me, like I'm some experiment, Leo, a game. You pushed me away, lied to me, and made me question everything. And now you want me to just forgive you? Just like that?" "I didn't know how else to prove it," Leo said quietly, his voice breaking. "I thought if I made you prove your love, I could see if we were real. I thought it would make everything clearer." Carla shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "You've got it all wrong. You never trusted me, Leo, not for a second. You've spent so much time worrying about losing control that you never even realized you were losing me." The words hit Leo like a punch to the gut. He staggered back, his eyes wide with shock. "Carla, please don't say that. I need you. I need you to understand." "Don't," Carla said, her voice cold, her anger rising. "Don't try to make me the villain here. You betrayed my trust, Leo. You didn't give me a chance. You thought you could control everything, including me, and you failed." Leo stepped forward, his voice desperate. "I love you. I've always loved you. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to prove it to you without all of this." He gestured toward the bare walls of their new life, the emptiness that surrounded them. I thought if I could make you stay without the money, I'd know for sure." Carla's eyes filled with tears as she took a step back. "You shouldn't have had to test me. I would have stayed with you, Leo. I would have loved you, but you pushed me away." And then, just like that, the illusion he had created, the carefully constructed wall between them, came crashing down. The trust had been shattered, and nothing would ever be the same again. The weeks that followed felt like a blur. Carla had tried to settle into their new life, the one Leo had forced on them, but it was impossible. She had given him a chance to prove himself, to prove that he was the man she loved. But the more she thought about it, the harder it became to trust him again. The walls that had once seemed so solid now felt fragile, as though any slight touch could make them crumble. Leo, too, seemed to be drowning in the consequences of his actions. He was no longer the confident, carefree man she once knew. He was silent, withdrawn, and consumed with guilt. His attempt to test her had backfired, and now they were both stuck in a situation neither of them could escape from. Carla had always prided herself on being self-sufficient, on being the kind of woman who didn't need anyone to take care of her. But now, in this small, bare apartment, she felt small and insignificant. The life she had once imagined for herself had vanished in the blink of an eye. And as much as she tried to push it away, the voice of Sarah O'Connor kept haunting her. "Leo will never love you the way you deserve." She tried to dismiss Sarah's words, but the seed of doubt had been planted deep within her. Could she trust Leo? Was he capable of giving her the love she needed, the kind of love that didn't come with strings attached? She was standing at the kitchen counter one evening chopping vegetables when the phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello?" Her voice was cautious. "Carla," came the voice on the other end. It was a man's voice, but not one she recognized. "This is Greg Daniels from the bank. I'm calling about Leo Matheson's accounts." Carla's stomach dropped. "What? What about Leo's accounts?" "There's been a major issue with his investments. He's in deeper than he's let on. We've been trying to reach him for weeks, but he's not responding. We need to discuss his financial status as things are escalating." Carla's breath caught in her throat. The last thing she needed was another revelation about Leo's tangled finances. She had already been blindsided by the debts and lies that had come to light. But now this? The man she loved, the man who had tested her love, had been hiding even more from her. "Why are you calling me?" Carla asked, her voice tight with uncertainty. "We've been unable to contact him directly," Greg explained, his tone professional but edged with concern. "We believe he may be in serious financial trouble, and we need to discuss his assets, but we're worried about the situation." Carla's head spun. This was more than just personal debt. This was something bigger, something that could completely destroy everything they had worked for. "Is there anything I can do?" Carla asked, her voice trembling as the weight of the situation sank in. "I'm afraid it's out of your hands," Greg replied. "But you need to prepare for what's coming. There's a lot more at stake here than you realize." Before Carla could say anything more, the line went dead. She stood there, frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. The news hit her like a wave, drowning her in uncertainty. The man she had given everything to, the man she had trusted, was now tangled in something even more complicated than she could have imagined. She turned around slowly to see Leo standing in the doorway, his face pale, his eyes full of guilt. He had heard everything. "Carla, I didn't want you to find out like this," Leo said quietly. His voice was barely a whisper, and his shoulders slumped as though the weight of the world was on him. "I was going to tell you. I swear I was." Carla didn't speak right away. She couldn't. Her heart was pounding in her chest as she processed the words she had just heard. He had been hiding even more from her than she could have imagined. It wasn't just the financial collapse, the debts. It was deeper. Leo had lied to her again, but this time, it wasn't just about their relationship. It was about everything, about his entire future. "How much, Leo?" Carla asked, her voice barely a whisper. "How much trouble are you in?" Leo closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "It's bad, Carla. Worse than I ever thought it could get. And I've been trying to keep you out of it, but I failed. I didn't know how to fix this. I didn't want you to see me like this." Carla stepped back, her chest tightening. "You've been lying to me about everything. All this time while we were going through this test, you were hiding this from me. This is the real truth, isn't it?" Leo's silence spoke volumes. He couldn't deny it. She was right. He had tried to protect her, but in doing so, he had built a wall of lies that now seemed impossible to tear down. "I was trying to protect you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought if I could just get everything sorted, I could give you the life you deserve. But I failed. I've lost everything, and now I'm just waiting for it all to fall apart." Carla's mind reeled. The weight of everything was crashing down on her. But it wasn't just the money, the debts, or the lies. It was the realization that Leo hadn't trusted her enough to tell her the truth. He had kept her in the dark, hoping that if he just fixed it all, he could make everything right. She wanted to scream, to yell at him for everything he had done. But the anger was swallowed by something else, something more painful. The betrayal. It was too much to bear. "You don't get to protect me, Leo," Carla said, her voice steady but filled with sadness. "You've been keeping me in the dark for so long, and now look where we are. I don't know if I can keep doing this with you." Leo took a step forward, but Carla held up her hand. "No, you've done enough damage. I need to figure out what I need. I can't keep living like this." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Carla turned away, unable to look at him any longer. Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion, pain, and frustration. The twist of fate had been too much. She had trusted him, but now, with the weight of his secrets exposed, She didn't know if she could ever trust him again. Carla hadn't slept. The weight of the past weeks felt like a constant pressure against her chest. She had tried to move past the pain, to look at Leo and see him as the man she had fallen in love with. But every time she closed her eyes, the memories of his lies crept back into her mind. She could still hear Sarah's voice, still feel the sting of betrayal every time she thought about how Leo had hidden the truth from her. They had reached a breaking point. There was no more pretending, no more hoping things would magically get better. She had given him every chance to prove himself, to show that his love for her was real, but now, after everything, she wasn't sure if there was anything left to save. She stood by the window of their small apartment, the city lights flickering in the distance. This was where they had started over. This was supposed to be a new beginning, a chance to rebuild their lives. But now, with all the lies uncovered, she felt like she was standing at a crossroads. The phone rang, and Carla's heart skipped a beat. She didn't need to look at the caller ID. She knew it was Leo. She picked up the phone. "What is it?" she asked, trying to keep the anger from creeping into her voice. "I need to see you." Leo's voice crackled through the line. There was something in it, something raw, desperate. "Please, Carla." Carla closed her eyes. She could hear the plea in his voice, the same one that had once melted her heart. But now it felt different. It felt like an ultimatum. She took a deep breath. "I'm not sure this is what I need right now." "I know," Leo responded softly. "But I can't live like this anymore. I need to explain. I need you to understand." "Explain what, Leo?" Carla asked, her voice trembling with frustration. "What else is there to explain? You've lied to me, hidden everything from me, and you expect me to just forgive you, to pretend like none of this ever happened." Leo was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his words were quiet, almost as if he were speaking to himself. "I've never felt more out of control in my life. I thought I could fix everything by controlling it, by keeping you away from the truth. But now I see how wrong I was." Carla could hear the defeat in his voice. For a moment, she felt a flicker of sympathy. But the sympathy was quickly overshadowed by the anger, the hurt that had built up inside her. She had spent so many nights wondering if Leo really loved her, and now she knew the truth. He didn't trust her, not even enough to share the truth with her. "I don't know if I can do this anymore," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can keep pretending like we can just pick up where we left off." "Please, Carla," Leo said, his voice breaking. "I love you. I never wanted to hurt you, but I was scared. I thought if I could control everything, I could keep you with me. I was wrong." Carla's heart ached at his words, but the ache wasn't enough to erase the pain he had caused. The lies, the secrets, the manipulation, the games. "I don't think I can trust you again," she whispered, the words feeling like they were being torn from her chest. "I want to, God, I want to believe that we can fix this, that we can move forward, but I don't know how." Leo's silence on the other end of the line was deafening. She could almost hear the weight of his regret. And then in the distance, she heard a soft sob. "I've destroyed everything, haven't I?" Leo's voice was barely audible. "I don't know how to fix it, Carla, but I swear to you, I'll spend the rest of my life trying." Carla closed her eyes, trying to hold back the tears. She had loved him. She had trusted him. And now, she wasn't sure if there was any part of their relationship that was real anymore. Her thoughts swirled in a dizzying mix of confusion and anger. Could she forgive him? Could she trust him again? Or was it too late? "I can't answer that right now," Carla said, her voice steady but cold. "I need space. I need to figure this out for myself." "I understand," Leo replied, his voice barely a whisper. "I'll give you the time you need. But know this, Carla. No matter what happens, I love you. And I'm not going anywhere." She didn't respond. She didn't know what to say. She just hung up the phone, the silence filling the room. Carla walked over to the small dining table, sitting down and burying her face in her hands. Her mind was a whirlwind. Every part of her wanted to forgive Leo. She wanted to believe that they could go back to the way things were. But deep down, she knew that wasn't possible. The lies had been too great. The trust had been broken beyond repair. Could she really walk away from him? Could she let go of the man she had loved so deeply, the man who had once made her feel like she was everything to him? But could she keep living in this broken version of their relationship, a relationship built on lies and deception? Her heart ached with the weight of the decision, and as she sat there in the silence, she knew she had to choose. The question was no longer whether she could forgive Leo. It was whether she could forgive herself for trusting him in the first place. The pain was unbearable. The decision was hers to make, but it felt impossible. It had been 2 weeks since Leo's confession, 2 weeks of silence, 2 weeks of Carla sitting in the small, bare apartment wondering what was left of them. The tests Leo had imposed on her had been the breaking point, but the aftermath was worse than she ever imagined. The trust was gone, but the love remained tangled in her heart, refusing to be untangled. Leo hadn't pushed her for an answer, and for that she was grateful. He had given her space, though the silence between them felt suffocating. Neither of them spoke of the future, nor did they mention the past. It was as though they were existing in this strange limbo, neither truly moving forward, yet neither completely letting go. Carla had thought she knew what she wanted. She thought that by keeping her distance from Leo, she could somehow protect herself from further pain. But as the days wore on, she found herself longing for the Leo she once knew. The confident, charming man who made her laugh and made her feel like she was the most important person in the world. But the reality was that Leo had shattered that image, and every time she looked at him, she saw the man who had betrayed her trust. She hadn't expected forgiveness to come easily, but time had only made the wound more difficult to heal. Every memory she held on to, every moment they shared, felt like it was slipping further and further away. One evening, as Carla was flipping through a book she hadn't read in months, the sound of Leo's footsteps broke through her thoughts. He had been gone for most of the day, trying to resolve his business affairs, but now he was home, standing in the doorway, looking as worn out as she felt. "Carla," Leo's voice was gentle, barely above a whisper. "I think we need to talk." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned her attention back to the pages of the book, her mind far away from the words on the page. "Carla," Leo repeated, a little firmer this time. "I need to know where we stand. I can't keep living in this uncertainty." Carla finally put the book down, meeting his gaze. There was a quiet desperation in his eyes, a longing she hadn't seen in a long time. And yet, despite everything, she couldn't bring herself to respond with the same longing. "I don't know what you want me to say, Leo," she replied, her voice cold, though it trembled slightly at the edges. "I've given you all the space you asked for. You've had your chance to show me that I can trust you, but the truth is, I'm not sure I can anymore." Leo took a step forward, his face full of regret. "I understand that. I've hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. But I love you, Carla. I know that now, more than I've ever known anything in my life. And I don't want to lose you." Carla stood up, walking past him to the window. She needed the distance, even if just for a moment. "I want to believe that you're telling the truth, Leo. I really do. But right now, all I can feel is the weight of everything you've kept from me." "I know," Leo said, his voice heavy. "But can we try? Can we at least try to rebuild? I can't change the past, but I'll spend every moment of the future making it up to you." The sincerity in his voice struck her deeply, but the wound still hurt. And every word Leo spoke seemed to carry the weight of a promise he had failed to keep before. She wanted to believe in him, in them, but fear of being hurt again, held her back. "I'm not sure if I'm ready to do that, Leo," she said quietly, her voice strained. "I don't know if I can, not after everything." Leo's face fell, the sadness palpable. "I understand. I just need you to know that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere, no matter what happens." Carla closed her eyes, feeling the tears rise in her throat. The truth was, she didn't know what she wanted anymore. She had lived in this world of uncertainty for so long, and now she wasn't sure what the right path was. Her love for Leo was still there, buried beneath the layers of hurt, but was that enough to rebuild what they had? "I need time, Leo," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need time to figure out if we can make this work, If I can trust you again. Leo nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. I can wait. I'll wait for as long as it takes. But I need you to know that I'm not giving up on us. Carla turned away, walking back to the table where her unfinished meal sat. She wasn't sure how long she could keep living in this limbo. Every part of her ached for the Leo she had lost, but the fear of trusting him again was overwhelming. Could love truly survive after such betrayal? Could time heal the scars that had been left behind? The decision felt too big to make, and yet, it was the one that loomed over her every moment. Could she forgive him? Could she let go of the past and move forward into an uncertain future with Leo? Or was it time to walk away and find a life that was hers alone, free from the weight of the lies and betrayal? As the evening wore on, Carla sat in silence, staring at the walls that once felt like home, trying to imagine a future that no longer seemed so clear. The weight of the phone call still lingered in Carla's mind. The conversation with Greg Daniels had left her feeling like she was drowning, caught between the love she still felt for Leo and the burden of all the secrets that had been buried beneath their relationship. She had spent the last few days trying to process everything: Leo's debts, his lies, his manipulation. And yet, despite the overwhelming betrayal, there was a part of her that still ached for him. That part of her that wanted to believe he could be the man he once was, the man who had shown her such tenderness and love before everything fell apart. But the truth was, the burden of the secrets Leo had been carrying was far greater than she had ever imagined. It wasn't just the financial ruin or the debt. It was the realization that for years, Leo had been hiding who he really was. The man she loved wasn't the one she had thought him to be. He had built his life on lies, and now those lies were threatening to destroy everything they had built together. Carla sat in the small kitchen, the silence of the apartment stretching around her. She couldn't bring herself to talk to Leo, not yet. She had spent so much time questioning him, but she couldn't bring herself to face the full truth. What was left of their relationship now? What was the point of continuing when the foundation they had built together had been so shattered? The door creaked open, and Leo stepped inside, his face drawn with exhaustion. His eyes met Carla's, and for a moment, there was nothing but silence. She could see the guilt in his expression, but there was something else too. A quiet desperation that had been there ever since the day the truth came crashing down. "I know you've been thinking," Leo said quietly, his voice strained. "I know you've been questioning everything. I don't expect you to forgive me, Carla, but I need you to understand. I was doing everything I could to protect us. I thought I could fix it." Carla's heart raced as she listened to him. She wanted to scream at him, tell him how much he had hurt her, how much the lies had cut into her. But she couldn't find the words. Instead, she simply stood there, her mind swirling with emotions. "Protect us?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Leo, all you've done is create a web of lies. And now, it's all falling apart. You haven't protected us. You've kept me in the dark. I don't know who you are anymore." Leo stepped forward, his hands trembling as he reached out to her. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. But I was afraid. I didn't think I could keep you without everything else. Without the money. Without the life I gave you. I didn't think I was enough for you." Carla's chest tightened, but the anger that had been simmering beneath the surface was starting to rise again. "You never trusted me, Leo. You never gave me the chance to love you for who you are. Instead, you made me question everything. You made me feel like I wasn't enough." Leo's face fell, and for a moment, Carla saw the vulnerability in his eyes. It wasn't the confident man she had known. It was the broken man who had lost everything. The man who had been hiding behind his wealth, his lies, his fear. "I know," he said, his voice trembling. "I know I messed up. I know I've hurt you. But I need you to understand. I never wanted to be this person. I was just scared that I would lose you." Carla closed her eyes, the tears threatening to spill. She had been scared too. She had been scared of the truth, scared of what it meant for their future. But more than anything, she had been scared of losing herself in the process. She turned away from Leo, walking across the room. "I don't know what to do anymore," she said, her voice breaking. I don't know if I can keep doing this. I don't know if I can keep loving someone who has lied to me for so long." Leo was silent for a long moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "I love you, Carla. I always have. But I know I've made mistakes. I know I've hurt you, and I can't fix it overnight. But I will do whatever it takes to show you that I'm not the same person anymore." Carla turned back to face him. The pain in his eyes mirrored her own, and for a moment she allowed herself to believe him. But then the weight of the past few weeks came rushing back. The lies, the deception, the emotional manipulation. The pain of not knowing who Leo really was. "I want to believe you," Carla said softly, her heart aching with every word. "But right now I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can keep living in this world where everything we've had is built on secrets." Leo took a step forward, but Carla held up her hand, stopping him. "No, Leo. I need to figure this out for myself. I need time. I need to understand if I can trust you again, if I can ever trust us again." Leo's face tightened, but he nodded slowly. "I understand. I'll give you the time you need. But I need you to know that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Carla didn't respond. She didn't know what to say. The weight of the secrets Leo had carried for so long had become too much for her to bear. And now, with everything exposed, she was left to pick up the pieces of a shattered relationship. As Leo turned to leave the room, Carla sat down at the kitchen table, her head in her hands. The weight of everything, his secrets, the lies, the years of uncertainty, pressed down on her like 1,000 bricks. The burden of his secrets was no longer just his to carry. It was hers too. Carla stared out of the window, the steady hum of the city below offering no comfort. It had been 2 days since Leo had left, giving her the space she had asked for. In those 2 days, she had tried to sort through the confusion in her mind. The past few months had felt like a whirlwind of lies, half-truths, and broken promises. But no matter how much time passed, she couldn't escape the one painful truth. Leo's deception ran deeper than she had ever known. Her thoughts kept returning to the same question. Why did he do this? Why had he kept so many secrets from her? And why, when he had the chance to come clean, had he waited until everything had already crumbled? The lies he had told her, about his finances, about the depth of his struggles, had left her reeling. But it wasn't just the financial deceit. It was the way he had played with her heart, the way he had tested her love as if it were a mere game. She had thought she knew Leo, his fears, his vulnerabilities, his dreams. But now she was left questioning everything. She had loved him with everything she had, and in return he had given her a heart built on illusions. A knock at the door broke her reverie. Carla's heart skipped and she instinctively stood up. She wasn't sure if she was ready to face him again, but she knew that eventually they would have to talk. When she opened the door, Leo stood there, his face tired, his eyes holding a mixture of hope and guilt. He looked different, broken, smaller somehow, as though the weight of his mistakes had physically drained him. "I need to talk to you," Leo said quietly, his voice hoarse. Carla hesitated but stepped aside to let him in. She couldn't avoid him forever. He walked in slowly, glancing around the small apartment. It was a far cry from the lavish home they once shared, but for Carla, it felt like a reflection of where their relationship had ended up, stripped down, raw, and uncertain. Leo turned to face her, his hands trembling slightly. "I'm not here to beg, Carla," he said softly. "I know I've hurt you more than I can even explain. But I need you to understand something." Carla folded her arms, her stance defensive. "What's left to explain, Leo? You've told me everything, or so I thought." Leo winced at her words but didn't look away. "I've been lying to you. I admit that. But not just about the money. I lied to you about us, about who I am, about why I pushed you away, about everything." Carla's breath caught. "What do you mean?" "I thought I was protecting you," Leo said, his voice filled with regret. "I thought I was doing the right thing by keeping you in the dark about my finances. I thought if I kept you away from the truth, you wouldn't see how broken I really was. But the real reason I kept you at arm's length wasn't the money. It was because I didn't feel worthy of you." Carla's heart thudded painfully in her chest. You didn't feel worthy of me after everything we've been through together? Leo nodded slowly. I've always been scared, Carla. Scared that I wasn't enough for you. Scared that one day you'd look at me and see the mess I really am. So I created this illusion, this perfect life. I thought if I gave you everything, you'd never look too closely. But in the end, all it did was push you away. Carla's mind was spinning. Leo, Let me finish, Leo interrupted, his voice almost pleading. I know I've hurt you more than anyone ever could. But the truth is, I wasn't protecting you. I was protecting myself. I was so afraid of losing you, of losing the life we had, that I didn't even realize I was destroying everything. I didn't realize that love isn't about the things we have. It's about who we are. And I failed you, Carla. I failed us. His words were like a punch to her chest. She wanted to scream at him, to throw everything in her power at him for what he had done. But there was something in his eyes, something she hadn't seen before, that made her stop. It was vulnerability, real vulnerability. Not the kind of facade he had worn for so long, but the kind that stripped him of everything, leaving only the truth behind. I don't know if I can trust you again, Leo, she said quietly, her voice breaking. You made me question everything. You made me feel like I wasn't enough. And now I don't know if we can go back. Leo's face twisted in pain, but he didn't step back. I don't expect you to just forgive me. I don't expect everything to be okay just because I'm sorry. But I need you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right. I'm not the man I was, and I'm not asking you to love me because of the money or because of the life I can give you. I'm asking you to love me for who I really am. Carla took a deep breath, fighting to hold back the flood of emotions that had built up inside her. And who are you really, Leo? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Who is the man standing in front of me now? Is he the man who lied, who manipulated me, or is he the man who's willing to fight for us? Leo stepped forward slowly, his eyes locked on hers. I don't know if I can ever undo what I've done, but I can promise you this. I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'm worthy of your trust, that I'm worthy of your love. The silence between them stretched on, but this time it wasn't filled with anger or hurt. It was filled with something else, something Carla wasn't sure she was ready to face. She closed her eyes, her mind a battlefield. The past few months had been the hardest of her life, and the pain still lingered. But in Leo's words, she could hear something she hadn't heard before: sincerity. Maybe it wasn't enough. Maybe it would never be enough. But there was something about Leo's brokenness that made her feel like they could find a way back. Together. I don't know if I can trust you again, Leo, Carla said softly, looking him in the eyes. But I want to try. Leo exhaled shakily, relief washing over his features. He took a step closer, his hand reaching out tentatively. That's all I'm asking for. And for the first time in months, Carla allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could rebuild what had been broken. The days after that conversation passed slowly, each one feeling like a heavy weight pressing on Carla's chest. But for the first time since everything had come crashing down, something in her heart began to shift. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic change. There was no magic moment, no miracle. It was small, fragile, but it was there. A glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, she and Leo could find their way back to something real. Leo had given her the space she asked for, not pushing, not rushing her. He had let her come to her own conclusions, and each time she saw him, there was no defensiveness, no excuses. Only the man who had admitted his mistakes, who had laid bare his soul. But was that enough? Carla was still unsure. Trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight. It wasn't something that could be fixed by a few heartfelt words. But she was willing to try. Maybe it wouldn't be perfect. Maybe they wouldn't go back to what they once had. But the idea of moving forward, of trying again, felt like the only path that mattered. One evening, Leo sat down across from her at the small dining table, his eyes watching her carefully. They hadn't talked about what came next, hadn't discussed their future. But tonight, He was determined to start. "I've been thinking a lot," he began, his voice steady, though Carla could hear the vulnerability beneath it. "I know that what I did can't be undone. I can't change the past. But I can show you that I'm trying to be the man you deserve." Carla met his gaze, her heart aching with a mix of hope and uncertainty. She had heard him say those words before, but this time there was something different in the way he said them. His eyes weren't just filled with guilt, they were filled with determination. "I don't know if you'll ever fully forgive me," Leo continued, "but I need you to know that I'm not giving up on us. I'm going to do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm worthy of your trust." Carla felt the weight of his words. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that they could move past the destruction he had caused. But could she? "I'm not asking you to forget, Leo," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't think I could forget, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to see if we can rebuild." Leo reached across the table, his hand resting lightly over hers. "That's all I can ask for," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how long it will take or if it will ever feel like it did before, but I'm willing to do the work, to prove to you that I'm not the man who lied to you. I'm not the man who pushed you away. I'm someone who wants to make things right." Carla didn't pull away from his touch. It wasn't easy, and every part of her still hurt from the betrayal. But there was something in the way Leo held her gaze, something in his quiet sincerity that made her believe he was truly trying. "I don't expect you to just forget everything that's happened," Leo said, almost reading her mind. "I know that trust is fragile, and it's not something that can be rebuilt overnight, but I'll spend every day showing you that I'm worthy of it." The room was still, the silence heavy between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. For the first time in a long while, Carla felt like they were in the same space, in the same place, even though the past was still lurking like a shadow between them. "I think I can give you another chance," Carla said, her voice steady despite the emotions flooding through her. "But you need to understand, I can't just dive in and forget everything. I need time. I need to see that the man I'm with now is the man I can trust, not the man who hid his secrets from me." Leo nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "I get it, and I'll give you all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Carla could feel the weight of the decision they had just made, the path they had chosen to take. It wouldn't be easy. There would be times when the doubt would creep in, when the fear of being hurt again would make her want to pull away. But she couldn't keep living in the past. She couldn't keep holding on to the betrayal. She had to believe in the possibility of redemption. She had to believe that Leo could be the man he said he wanted to be. "I think that's the hardest part," Carla said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, "letting go of the past." Leo gave her a small smile, the kind of smile that she hadn't seen in so long, genuine, hopeful. "I know, but I'm here. I'm not going to run away, and I'm not going to make the same mistakes again. I'm ready to fight for this, for you." Carla's heart softened at his words. She wasn't sure where the path would lead, or if they could ever truly return to what they once had. But the fear of losing him, of losing what they could still have, was stronger than the fear of being hurt again. "Let's take it one step at a time," Carla said, her voice gaining strength. "But I'm willing to try. With you." Leo's eyes shone with gratitude, but there was something else there. Something that spoke of his own vulnerability, his own willingness to fight for their future. The journey ahead would be long and uncertain. The road to redemption wasn't an easy one, but for the first time in a long while, Carla felt like they were on it together, and that was enough to keep moving forward. It had been weeks since they decided to try again, but Carla's heart was still heavy with uncertainty. The air between her and Leo was thick with unspoken words, and though he tried his best to show that he was different, Carla couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was still off. His transformation was evident, but the question remained, was it enough? Everything had felt like a slow crawl back towards something resembling normalcy, but Carla had been holding her breath, waiting for the moment when the truth would reveal itself again, perhaps in a different form, something she hadn't expected. She had been living in the limbo of his promises, still afraid to let herself believe that Leo's words meant anything more than fleeting hope. Tonight, it seemed, was the night that the truth would finally break free. Leo had come home late, the tension in his posture unmistakable as he walked through the door. Carla, who had been pacing in the kitchen trying to gather her thoughts, froze when she saw him. His eyes avoided hers, and the moment stretched painfully between them. She could feel the weight of it before it even began. "Leo," she said, her voice calm though her heart was racing. "We need to talk." Leo stopped in his tracks, his expression unreadable. He seemed to be searching for something, an escape perhaps, or maybe the right words. "I know," he finally said, his voice quieter than usual. "I've been meaning to." "No," Carla interrupted, shaking her head. "Don't. I need to hear this from you. All of it." Leo's shoulders slumped, as though he had been waiting for this moment. He nodded, slowly taking a step toward her. "I don't know how to start," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Carla's eyes searched his face, trying to read the depths of his emotions. For weeks now, he had promised he would be open with her, that he wouldn't hide anything, but every time they tried to talk about the truth, the conversation shifted, avoiding the real issues at hand. And tonight, it felt different. "Why do I feel like I'm still in the dark, Leo?" Carla asked, her voice thick with emotion. "You say you love me, that you want to rebuild, but I don't know if I can keep doing this. I don't know if I can trust you if everything is still hidden underneath." Leo looked down at his feet, taking a deep breath. For a moment, it seemed like he might back away again. But then he looked up, his eyes meeting hers, raw and vulnerable. "I've been carrying something with me," he confessed. "Something I should have told you before. Something I should have shared." Carla's breath caught. This was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The moment where everything would either fall into place or it would all crumble. "What is it, Leo?" she asked, her voice barely steady. She could feel the panic rising in her chest. What is he hiding now? He hesitated for a moment, then took a step closer. His face twisted in guilt, and Carla could see that this wasn't just about the money, about the debts he had confessed to months ago. There was something deeper, something that still weighed on him. "I lied to you again," Leo admitted, his voice breaking. "I told you that I had resolved everything, but I didn't. The debts weren't all that bad. But the company I was running, it was a mess, and I didn't want you to know. I thought I could fix it, but instead, I just dug myself into a deeper hole." Carla felt the ground slip beneath her. Her hands trembled, and her chest tightened. "So this isn't over. You've been hiding this from me. Why?" Leo's eyes were filled with tears now, his whole body trembling with the weight of his own confession. "I was ashamed, Carla, ashamed of the mess I'd made, ashamed of how I'd allowed everything to fall apart. I didn't want you to see that. I wanted you to see me as strong, as capable. But the truth is, I wasn't." Carla shook her head, the anger swelling within her. "And all this time you kept me in the dark, making me believe you were fixing it, that we could rebuild. All the lies you've told me, it was all for nothing." Leo reached out, but Carla stepped back, putting distance between them. She couldn't let him touch her now, not after everything. "I trusted you," she whispered, the tears stinging her eyes. "I trusted you, Leo, and you've lied to me over and over again. Why didn't you just tell me the truth?" Leo swallowed hard, his face contorted with regret. "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't think you'd be able to understand. I thought you'd leave me. I thought if you knew the truth, you'd walk away. And now?" Carla's voice broke. "What do you expect me to do now, Leo? How am I supposed to move on from this?" Leo stood there, frozen, the weight of his mistakes hanging heavily between them. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said quietly. "But I'm here. I'm still here, and I want to do whatever it takes to make things right." Carla took a step back, her eyes never leaving his. "I don't know if I can do this anymore," she said softly. "I can't keep living like this, Leo. I can't keep loving someone who keeps breaking my trust." Leo's eyes filled with tears, and he dropped his head. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." But the apology wasn't enough. The damage had been done. And in that moment, Carla knew that she couldn't keep living in this toxic cycle. She had to make a choice. "I need to be alone, Leo," she said firmly. "I need to think." For a long moment, Leo said nothing. His eyes pleaded with her, but Carla couldn't respond. She turned away from him, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing. She couldn't keep living in the past, in the heart of his deception. Carla sat alone in the apartment, the silence stretching out between her and the world outside. Leo had left hours ago, but the weight of their conversation still hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. It felt as if everything had led to this moment, the final confrontation, the final truth, the moment when she had to decide whether the love they once had was enough to overcome everything that had been broken between them. She had asked for space. She had demanded honesty. And now, as the evening wore on, she found herself wondering if she could ever truly move past the pain Leo had caused. The truth had always been elusive between them, masked by a facade of love, wealth, and promises. But now, for the first time, she could see it for what it was, painful, raw, and undiluted. Leo's confession had shattered the illusion they had built together. He had lied to her, he had betrayed her trust. And yet, despite everything, the love they had shared still lingered like a faint echo. Was love really enough to rebuild the wreckage? Was it worth the cost? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the door creaking open. She hadn't expected Leo to come back. After the intensity of their conversation, she thought he would give her the space she had asked for. But there he stood in the doorway, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and regret. "I'm sorry," Leo said softly, his voice breaking. "I shouldn't have pushed you like that. I shouldn't have tried to control everything. I don't know how to fix this, Carla, but I love you. I love you more than anything, and I'll do anything to prove that to you." Carla looked at him, her heart caught in a vice. She wanted to reach out to him, to say the words that could fix everything, but the distance between them felt insurmountable. How could she trust him again? How could she love him the same way after everything he had done? "I don't know if I can forgive you, Leo," Carla said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've hurt me so much. I don't know if I can ever trust you the same way again." Leo stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. I know I've destroyed your trust, but I swear to you, I'm not the man I was. I'll do whatever it takes to prove that. I'll spend every day trying to make things right, even if it takes the rest of my life." Carla shook her head. The words caught in her throat. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that they could overcome this, that love could heal the wounds he had inflicted. But every time she thought about the lies, the manipulation, the hurt, she couldn't help but feel like a part of her had already been broken beyond repair. "Leo," she said quietly, "I love you. I always have. But love isn't enough. Love doesn't fix broken trust. Love doesn't take away the pain of betrayal. And right now, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I don't know if I can keep pretending like everything is fine." Leo's face crumpled with pain, and for the first time in a long while, Carla saw the depth of his remorse. He wasn't just apologizing for the mistakes he had made, he was mourning the loss of what they had shared. "I know I've lost your trust," he whispered. "But I can't lose you, Carla, please. Let me prove that I'm worth your love. Let me prove that I'm worth fighting for." Carla closed her eyes, the tears threatening to spill. She had fought for this relationship, fought for their love, but she couldn't fight for something that was already broken. She couldn't keep walking down a path that led to the same wounds, the same betrayals. "I don't know how to do this anymore," she said softly, her voice cracking with emotion. "I don't know how to keep loving you when everything feels like a lie. I don't know if I can ever get past this." Leo took her hand in his grip tight with desperation. "You don't have to do it alone, Carla. We don't have to do this alone. I've made mistakes, but I'm willing to spend the rest of my life making it right. I'll prove to you that I'm not the man I was. Please, just give me a chance." Carla pulled her hand back, her chest tight with the weight of his words. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, could feel the depth of his pain. But sincerity wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to erase the scars he had left, the lies he had told. And as much as she loved him, as much as she still cared for him, she couldn't ignore the fact that the trust they had built had been shattered beyond recognition. "I wish I could believe you, Leo," Carla said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wish I could. But the truth is, I don't know if I can ever forgive you. I don't know if I can love you the way I did before." Leo took a step back, his face pale, the weight of her words sinking in. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, heavy and painful. Finally, Leo spoke, his voice filled with quiet resignation. "I understand, Carla, I do. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything." The finality of his words struck her like a blow. She had wanted this, wanted him to understand the gravity of what he had done. But now that it was here, the realization hit her harder than she could have imagined. The cost of love, of trust, was too high. She couldn't pay the price. Leo turned to leave, his footsteps heavy. But before he reached the door, Carla called out to him. "Leo," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if we can fix this, but I need time. Time to figure out if I can forgive you. Time to figure out if I can love you again." Leo stopped at the door, his back turned to her, but he didn't say anything. He simply nodded, his shoulders hunched in defeat. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and Carla was left alone in the silence. The weight of the decision pressed down on her chest, and for the first time in a long while, she felt the crushing weight of uncertainty. The silence was deafening. Carla sat in the apartment alone once again, the sound of her own thoughts the only thing that filled the space. Leo had left, and for the first time since they'd started this journey, she truly felt the weight of his absence. The conversation, the promises, the hope, they all seemed like fragments of a dream now. She was left holding the broken pieces of something she had tried so hard to fix. 2 weeks had passed since she had told Leo she needed time, and yet every day felt like a new battle. She wanted to move forward. She wanted to believe that they could overcome everything. But how could she, when every step forward felt like a reminder of the lies he had told? Every time she saw his face, heard his voice, she couldn't escape the feeling of betrayal that clung to her like a shadow. She had tried. God, she had tried. But the constant questioning, the wondering if he was truly being honest with her, had become too much. She had given him every opportunity to prove himself, to show that he was different, that he could be the man she needed him to be. But in the end, the cracks in their foundation had become too wide to ignore. Carla picked up her phone, her fingers hovering over the screen. She had meant to call Leo, to tell him everything she was feeling, but every time she tried, the words failed her. She didn't even know what she was supposed to say anymore. What could she say? That she loved him, but didn't trust him? That she wanted to believe in him, but couldn't fight the fear that he would hurt her again? Her thumb slid across the screen, and she dialed his number without even realizing it. It rang. Once, twice, 3 times. And then, just as she was about to hang up, Leo's voice came through the phone. "Carla?" His voice sounded strained, tired, as if he had been waiting for this moment too. "Are you okay?" She paused, her chest tightening at the sound of his voice. There was so much she wanted to say, but she didn't know where to start. How could she explain what she was feeling without breaking down? How could she make him understand the chaos that had taken over her heart? "No, Leo," she finally said, her voice breaking. "I'm not okay." There was a long silence on the other end. She could feel the weight of his guilt, the weight of the years of lies that had brought them to this point. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," Carla whispered, the words coming out raw. "I don't know if I can keep going. I don't know if I can keep loving you, Leo." She could hear him gasp softly on the other end. "Carla, please don't say that. Don't." "I have to." Carla cut him off, her voice shaking. "I can't keep pretending like nothing's wrong. I can't keep pretending that I can just forget everything you've done, everything you've hidden. It's too much, Leo. You've pushed me too far. I don't know if I can come back from this." She could hear his breath hitch, and for a moment the silence felt suffocating. He didn't speak for a long time, and she wondered if he was even still there, if he was still willing to fight for her. Finally, Leo spoke, his voice almost too soft to hear. "I'm so sorry, Carla. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to destroy what we had." The words were familiar now, too familiar. She had heard them 1,000 times before. She had heard him apologize, heard him swear that he was different, that he would change. But how could she believe him? How could she trust that this time it was real? "I don't know what to do anymore, Leo," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if we can come back from this. I don't know if I can forgive you." The pain in her chest grew, threatening to swallow her whole. She had wanted to believe in him, wanted to believe that love could conquer all, but the truth was that love wasn't enough to fix everything. She couldn't keep pretending that they could just start over, that everything would be okay. It wasn't fair to either of them. "I don't want to lose you," Leo said urgently. "Please, Carla, please don't let this be the end." But Carla knew. She knew deep down that the breaking point had already come. There was nothing left to save. "I think we've already reached the end," she whispered, the tears finally spilling over. "I can't keep doing this. I can't keep living in the shadows of your lies." She heard a choked sob on the other end of the phone. "I love you, Carla. I love you. I'll do anything to make this right. Please don't leave me." Carla closed her eyes, feeling the weight of his words crush her. She had loved him so much. She had loved him with everything she had. But the cost of that love had become too high. She had given him everything, only to be left with nothing but pain. "I don't know if I can love you the same way anymore, Leo," she said, her voice breaking completely. "I don't know if I can keep carrying this. I can't keep being hurt by you. I have to let you go." Another long silence passed before Leo finally spoke again, his voice hoarse and trembling. I understand if you can't forgive me, but I'll never stop loving you." Carla's heart shattered at his words, but she knew it was over. She had reached the breaking point. There was no going back. "Goodbye, Leo," she whispered, the finality of the words sinking in. She hung up the phone, the silence in the apartment suffocating her. She had made her choice. She had walked away, and though the pain was unbearable, she knew it was the only way to save herself. Carla stood at the window, looking out into the night, her hands pressed against the cool glass. The apartment, once filled with the warmth of shared laughter and dreams of the future, now felt like a hollow shell. The air felt heavy, suffocating, as if every breath she took carried the weight of a decision she'd been avoiding for so long. It had been days since she made that painful phone call to Leo, the call that had ended everything. And yet, despite the distance, despite the silence, her mind had not found peace. She couldn't escape the image of Leo's face, the pain in his eyes, the words he had said to her in his final plea. "Please don't leave me." She closed her eyes, trying to push away the memory, but it lingered. Like a ghost she couldn't outrun. She thought she had made her choice. She thought she had done what was right for herself. But the reality of it, of being alone, of walking away from a love that had once meant everything to her, had begun to gnaw at her, slowly wearing down the resolve she thought was unbreakable. The cost of love had always been high, but she had never imagined it would feel like this. The emptiness in her chest was the price she was paying, the cost of letting go of someone she had shared her heart with for so long. Her phone buzzed on the table and she immediately knew who it was. It was Leo. He had been calling her, leaving messages, hoping that she would pick up. He hadn't given up. With a sigh, Carla picked up the phone and stared at the screen for a moment, her thumb hovering over the green button. She thought about ignoring it. She thought about moving on and leaving the past behind. But the truth was, she wasn't sure if she was ready to close that chapter for good. She pressed the button, bringing the phone to her ear. "Carla," Leo's voice came through, low and filled with emotion. "Please, just hear me out. I need to talk to you." Her heart twisted, but she steadied herself. She had to be strong. "Leo," she said, her voice steady, though it trembled with the weight of everything she was feeling. "We've already talked. I don't think there's anything left to say." "I know," he said softly, almost as if he was speaking to himself. "But I need you to know something. I need you to know that I'm not giving up. I don't care how long it takes, how much I have to prove. I will do whatever it takes to make things right." Carla's chest tightened. She had heard those words before. She had listened to him plead with her, begging her to stay, to trust him again. But how could she? How could she give him that trust when he had shattered it so completely? "I don't know if I can believe you anymore, Leo," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "How do I know that you're telling me the truth this time? How do I know you won't hurt me again?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, Carla thought he might have hung up. But then she heard his voice, raw and desperate. "I don't have any more lies left to tell, Carla. I've said it all. I've admitted everything, and I know it's too late to ask you to forgive me. But I love you. I always have, and I always will. And I need you to know that if you ever change your mind, if you ever decide that we can try again, I'll be here. I'll be waiting." Her heart clenched in her chest, the emotions overwhelming her. She had tried to move on. She had told herself that she couldn't keep living in the past, that she needed to let go of the love that had caused her so much pain. But the truth was, she wasn't ready to walk away from Leo completely. The thought of losing him forever was too much to bear. But the thought of staying with him, of opening herself up to the possibility of being hurt again, terrified her just as much. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know if I can keep loving you, knowing everything I've learned. I don't know if I can keep hoping for something that might never happen." There was a long pause, and then Leo spoke, his voice steady but filled with sadness. "I understand, Carla. I do. And if you choose to move on, if you choose to let go, I'll respect that. But I need you to know one thing. I will never stop loving you." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Carla closed her eyes, feeling the weight of them settle deep into her bones. This was it, the moment of truth, the moment when she had to make a choice that would change the course of her life. "I don't want to lose you, Leo," she said softly, the words barely escaping her lips. "But I can't keep doing this. I can't keep living in a relationship built on lies." Leo's voice softened, a quiet acceptance settling over him. "I know, and I'm sorry. I've done more than enough to hurt you, but if you ever decide that you want to try again, I'll be here. I'll be here, waiting." Carla took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision crash down on her. She had loved him, trusted him, but in the end, she couldn't keep holding on to a relationship that had been built on deception. "I need to let go, Leo," she said, her voice filled with finality. "I need to let go and move on. I'm sorry." There was a long silence on the other end, and for a moment Carla thought she might hear him beg her to stay. But instead, Leo said quietly, "I understand. Goodbye, Carla." And with that, the line went dead. Carla sat in the silence, the weight of her decision crashing over her. She had made the choice. It was time to move on, time to rebuild her life, free from the past. It wasn't easy. It never would be, but it was the only way forward.